Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Long Island Legends podcast, the only podcast on Long Island where we showcase the legendary figures that make our community so vibrant and so impactful. And today I am joined by my good friend, Zach Scher of Team Scher from Signature Premier Properties. Zach, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me and considering me a legend.
Yes,
I love that.
you are. You are. Now, we're going to get into it later. He's a legend in real estate. He's not a legend when it comes to identifying good draft picks that the New York Jets make. I just want to make that clear. Okay, we're going to get into that later. Okay, but funny. I don't know how many people know this, but you got it started in real estate like 2016, 15, right? In
16,
that range?
yeah. Yep.
So that was basically the time that I had decided I was going to start fixing and flipping houses. So, I had some real estate experience, but before that, I was, still working, my 9 to 5 or what, it was a 7 to 6 job. But we got started, at the same time. And at the time that, our respective careers were kind of hitting their stride, that's where you and I met each other. So kind of just give the viewers a little bit of information about, and I know you've talked about this before, about your background, why you decided ultimately to segue. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, real estate was sort of a potential just side hustle for you originally.
Yeah. So like my career kind of started, and what I went to school for was marketing and advertising and design. Like real estate was never, the idea. It kind of came to me. I was a full-time professor at Dowling College, and then Dowling closed, right? So I was a full-time professor there, and I had a consulting business where I was doing marketing and advertising for different companies. So when I knew that, the full-time job at Dowling wasn't going to be there anymore, I'm like, you know what? I should start maybe flipping some houses. I'm going to get my real estate license. So kind of, along the same idea. So I'm like, I'll get my license. I'll start flipping some houses, and maybe I'll sell some stuff on the side and, do more consulting. So I joined a team, right away, in real estate, because I didn't really know what I was doing, So I was like, let me latch on to somebody that knows what they're doing, get a little bit of experience that way. And through that and doing everything, I kind of realized that everything that I'd learned up until that point really helped fuel me to be a better real estate agent than the majority of what was out there. Because back in 2016, 10 years ago, roughly, not a lot of people were using social media at all in real estate. So, and that was something that like my every day I had to do for all these different companies. So I'm like, let me try to do some of that, into what what I'm doing. And then it really kind of just took off. My business really exploded. And, from there, I realized like, this is what I was meant for, and that's why, I kind of really took things from being a part-time, what was going to be like a side gig, into my, my passion, that fuels me every day.
Now, is it safe to say that if not for your marketing background, that it may have not been that rocket fuel that would have propelled you to where you were today? Do you think that sort of was the main catalyst that got you going?
I really think so, because like the team that I had joined, there were agents that have been doing it for, 15, 20 years, that were seasoned agents that were doing really, really well. And within, my first, 12 months where I was actually full time, I was doing double the business they were doing. And everybody was asking me like, what are you doing? What are you doing differently? And I was really just doing the things that I had been doing all along, just applying it to real estate, which at the time really just wasn't really being done as much. So it kind of set me apart. It gave me the ability to get in front of a lot more people, which is all in all what you really need to do with real estate. So I think the background there is really absolutely what fueled it.
So you've said a lot of things, and it's given me a lot to talk about. But 2016, do you remember how many deals you did?
So my first 6 months in the business, I did 6 deals.
6 deals. Okay.
6 deals. And then my next consecutive 12 months, I did 40.
You did 40.
Yeah.
You went 6 to 40. That I didn't actually know that.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy.
Okay. All right. So to that point, now obviously 40 is a lot, even for anybody. Even right now, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But how many deals has Team Scher been doing for the last few years? An average, since the last 3.
So typically we average right around 200 deals. So our best years, were like the COVID years, really 21, 22. We were doing a little bit more than 200, but we usually average anywhere between 180 to 200 deals a year.
Yeah. Now, when you started, right? And I know this was the same for me. Did you ever really think it was ever going to be 200? No. right?
No, that was never. And my goal, like, I have a pretty big team.
Yes.
We talk about it all.
Yeah.
I have like about 20, 25 agents at any given time, and
They're actually considering making their own town, a Team Scher town on Long Island, okay, because there's so many people that it could actually be its own community. So it maybe you have Selden, you have Center Reach, Lake Grove, you're gonna have Team Scher.
yeah, of course, yeah, that would be
Yeah.
that would be great. Yeah, no, it's just it's something that I never had planned for. When I decided to start my team, it was really supposed to be a small group, 3, 4 people max. So it was really just to kind of help me, because once I was doing that much business, I realized like I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
My mistake, was growing the team, starting to bring on agents, but not getting systems in place,
Yeah.
not hiring a full-time admin, not having the things to really scale. So I was kind of just figuring it out as I went.
Yeah. So, and I've been there as well. So to go back a little bit, right? Obviously, social media is now a staple of how agents do business. And you had said that you identified something that other people weren't doing, right? How critical is that now as we move into this world where AI is starting to dominate and things of that nature for a young agent that's coming in? What advice would you have for them in terms of looking at how people are doing things, but then also identifying what's coming down the pike, right, so to speak, and being able to get ahead of that, knowing that you did the same thing back when social media was, kind of a hobby for people?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's always important, especially within this industry, to always look at, what can set you apart, but also look at the fundamentals at the end of the day. Like, you still have to do the bare minimum, which is, answer your phone, work really hard, stay on top of everything.
Get in front of people.
Get in front of people.
Which is something you mentioned.
Right. And what I think is really useful with all the tools that we have now is it gives you the ability to do that in a lot of different ways. So like, traditionally before, social media, before everything else, it was really just, you had your listings, right? You had your listings, you had your open houses, and that's really how you were meeting people or your immediate network. Now we have so many tools to get in front of so many different people. And because of social media, there's so many ways to meet new people. So it's important that as a new agent or anybody that's in the industry to really look at those things and find a way, and don't be afraid to try something different, in order to find new ways to get in front of people.
But to your point, though, the fundamentals are still the fundamentals.
Absolutely.
The basics are still the basics. Those old school agents that may not be using things, they're still getting in front of people. They're doing door knocking. They're doing things that, by and large, will make you successful. Absolutely. It's a matter of how do you use those additional tools, social media, which is no longer an old tool, obviously, AI, and so many other things that are just coming out on a daily basis, it seems like, to amplify it, but you can't overlook the basics at the same time.
Can't overlook it.
Blocking and tackling and all that stuff, which,
the fundamentals.
The fundamentals,
Getting
which you can't pick a good fundamental player for the Jets, but that's aside. But when it comes to real estate, the fundamentals.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So now we've talked about that. We've talked about the fact that you immediately joined a team.
I did.
Okay. And now you have your own team. So you have, and what was the period of time that you were just a solo agent?
It's like a month.
Oh, it was a month. Oh, okay.
I realized pretty quickly, like when I went on my own, that wasn't going to work.
Zach Scher has been a part of a team. He has his own team for your entire career. So you, safe to say, feel as though being a part of a team or leading a team is pretty important.
I would say so. For the vast majority of agents, especially new agents, I think there are plenty of seasoned agents that have been in the industry for a long time. They've built their network. They have all of their referral-based business. They can probably do it. But even still, like those agents, I feel like at that point when you're building your business, if you want to scale it beyond what you're doing, a team really is the only way to do it, or at least hiring other people to be underneath you in some capacity. But yeah, I'm a big proponent of either being on a team or having a team.
Okay. For Team Scher, what is, and you as a team leader, your team is always growing. They're always producing. There's a lot of people that I see have been staying on the team long term. Okay. It's not like one of these teams with all this turnover. What is it that you do and what you provide as a team leader that not only makes people want to come, but stay?
So, I mean, I think as a person, I'm a very positive person. I try to surround myself with positive people.
Sometimes too positive, and
Yeah,
I will call you out on that.
it gets me.
Sometimes
in trouble.
I'll tell you, like, you got to look at this from a negative standpoint, Zach.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some bad here.
Get a little angrier at these people.
I do tell him that. I do
No,
tell him like you got to yell at them more. He's very nice, too nice, in my opinion.
I think to a degree it works for me. I think there are actual aspects where I should be a little bit more, forceful, but I think by surrounding myself with a lot of those types of people and giving that energy, it helps people to want to actually, gravitate back. I think another thing is I really never looked at my team as a way to like grow my wealth. Right? Like I did it really to help other people, to help other agents. Obviously, I'd be lying if I say it doesn't make me more money, but the reason it does is because of the amount of time and energy I put into it. So I'm a producing team leader, right? So I'm actually out there in the business doing things. So I think that the people that are on my team respect that and see it. So they're not just listening to me tell them what they should be doing. They're watching me doing it as well.
Yeah.
You're
like a player manager.
Yeah, so to speak. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like,
and you're like one of those coaches that maybe like gets a little bit more respect from the players because he played the game at a high level, right? So when these guys come in, if you look at a guy like I remember when Singletary was a coach, right? Harbaugh, right? Like these guys, they actually had a big impact.
Sure.
I'm not saying like I don't think Bill Belichick was a particularly good football player,
right?
But by and large, so that helps, right? When they're like, this guy's out in the trenches, he's done it or he's doing it now.
Yeah.
Right?
It makes a big difference if you're listening to somebody that is actually doing it as opposed to them telling you what you're supposed to do because that's what they know is the right way. Like when the agents that are on my team, when they come to me with a problem, I have the solution because I've gone through it. I've been a part of over 1,200 real estate transactions. So chances are I've seen it.
Yeah.
But, with that being said, we talk about how there's something new every day.
There's something new every day.
But yeah.
And let's face it, like a lot of the transactions that I do are pretty complicated, right?
Yes.
Like they are. And so we've gone, through the trenches together and, we still have setbacks, but that helps, you know what I mean? And we've, I don't want to say we've seen it all because we'll never see it all, but we've seen a lot of it, right? And that's a big part of it. And so the fact of the matter is that like, your team comes to you with these problems, they come to you with, these different headaches that they have, and chances are you've seen it in
some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. Okay. So now, as far as where we're headed, right? We talk about like the NAR lawsuit, right? The landscape of real estate that has changed. Okay. I'm starting, and I know you're seeing it. We see a lot of people, and I don't want to call out names, but we've seen a lot of people that have like used certain rules and regulations to behave unethically.
Sure.
Okay. We saw that a month ago in the house that we sold where the buyer's agent decided to put out, and get this one's rich. They said because of the new NAR, the NAR settlement rules and the regulations that came out as a result of it, the buyer will be paying our commission. Not uncommon.
Correct.
Not uncommon, but still, most of the time sellers are still paying, the buyer's end. And as a result, our commission, which will be paid by the buyer, is not 1%, not 2%, not 3%, not 4%, but 5%. Okay, it was a $450,000 house, and they were paying, I think it was $22,500, however the way the math works out.
Yeah.
And this was an example of somebody using a regulation, which we've talked about, that probably adds an unnecessary layer of complexity and probably doesn't do a lot to alleviate issues. And now people are using it, and I hate to say it, but I think more people are getting hurt, okay?
I think it really, it's all in how it's presented, right? And I think there's a lot of confusion about it. And I think in that instance, I think that particular agent just took advantage of the situation.
And created a whole array of smoke and mirrors. And this buyer that's buying a $450,000 house is paying an additional 5%.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
As a
like
buyer's
that's 5% is usually a listing commission that encompasses everything, right? So the fact that they weren't asking for commission, from our side, and they were just taking 5% completely from a buyer, it's robbery, almost like it's like, I understand, and now that we have to have these agreements in place with every buyer that we're showing around, the norm is 2 or 3%, and that's pretty standard. But that was the first time I've ever seen somebody really take it to that level. And then, and again, we don't know the situation on the other end, but it just didn't seem right.
No, it didn't seem right at all. So now I want to kind of, move forward and talk about, obviously our relationship. So we've been working since 2019. Okay. So, my career was starting to take off. Yours was, you were ahead in terms of where you were than I was, but I knew to get to the next level, right? We talk about bringing in the right people,
Sure.
right? And I've always wanted to grow, and you want to make more money, but I've also wanted to buy a better quality of life. And I knew to do that, I was going to have to bring in the right people, right? And so I had to make sure that the people that were listing the houses, the people that were working on the houses, the people that were handling the back end operations, all of those people had to be solid. Obviously, I know what you bring to the table, your ability to value properties, right? So I'm going to talk about two things, right?
Okay.
The first thing is we've been in a market that's kind of unprecedented in terms of like the lack of inventory and the amount of, the way we're seeing these bidding wars, and the prices getting pushed up. So my thing is, when you're evaluating properties for a seller, whether it's me as an investor or your average homeowner, okay, how important is it to really set the right expectations? And even despite the fact that it's probably going to go over, keeping that number on the lower end of those expectations, because we may not be in this forever.
I think just like anything else, the fundamental in real estate is all about price, right? So understanding the market and understanding the value of something is paramount. And then being able to put it out at the right price is so important. So valuating a property, it's definitely one of my strong suits, because I feel like every single day, especially with the amount of appointments that we do together, the amount of, houses that we have an opportunity to look at, I'm running ARVs, constantly. So I've got in my head, the knowledge of running ARVs on thousands of houses. So and the fact that I'm actually out there and still selling, working with buyers, working with sellers, that really helps me get a finger on the pulse of the market. So the combination of those things lets me know, like, okay, if we take a look at this house based off of this, we'll know that we can most likely get this number or above. And then, but it takes two to tango, right? So like I could tell you, this is where I think we should list it, but you could say, you know what, I need way more than that. We have to list it here. But you'd actually be shooting yourself in the foot. The fact that you have been able to surround yourself with the right people and then being able to actually let go and actually just trust that those people are going to do the right thing, I think is why you've become so successful, because, you let me do my job, and by doing that, we're able to make more together. You trust me. And I have a decent track record. I haven't really hurt you in any way. We usually exceed the expectations, but I think in especially, with what we're doing and the way that you structured your business, you've allowed yourself to really, oversee everything, but be able to let go, and let everybody do what they're supposed to.
So going back to your point where, you want to attract multiple offers, right? You and I, we go through this. I mean, we've put in steps in place to, try to weed out people. I mean, full disclosure, I have a blacklist of people that I won't work with. Okay.
It's pretty long.
It's pretty long. There's a lot of great players on Long Island. There's a lot of bad ones. Okay. There's some companies, like some mortgage companies, that I almost simply won't do business with. But attracting the right offer.
Yeah.
It's not always about the highest amount of money, right? It's about attracting. Now, sometimes, percent down, I don't get too worked up or excited about how much they're putting down on contract, but the right lender, the right inspector, the right attorney, all those people that can make the right title company, right? The ones that can make everything go smoothly is worth a lot, and a lot more than you'd think, right? Because at the end of the day, and I don't want to minimize an extra $10,000 or $20,000, but that's going to really feel like blood money if you're going after that extra $10,000 to $20,000 only to, and we've seen it, to be dragged through the mud and can't get to the finish line month after month after month, excuse after excuse. I will tell you, I don't care how much you need the money. It won't be worth it. Like a smooth transaction to me is always paramount, regardless of whether you're an investor or a homeowner.
Absolutely. There have been plenty of instances where we've taken deals that weren't the highest
Yeah.
because of that, because of the terms that are in place, because of we know that this person, this other agent, this attorney, the team that they have on this side is actually going to get it to the finish line, and it's going to be less of a headache. There are times where the money does just, substantially exceed the other ones where it's like you have to, especially once it's getting to, crazy numbers, you have to give it a shot. It's worth the roll of the dice.
Yeah.
But there are times where, 5, 10, 15 grand where it's like, you know what, I'd rather know that we're going to be done. We don't have to do, we don't have to chase these people. They're going to be chasing us to close and everything else like that. And that's what you kind of want.
So you brought up before about how you still act as a buyer's agent. I don't know of anybody, of a team leader that does as much volume as you do that still works with buyers, right? Because there's this air of, I don't know, entitlement, whatever you want to call it, right? That like, I only list houses.
I'm a listing agent.
I'm a listing agent. I want to list houses. I don't want to work with buyers. I've always liked that aspect of you because you get to see firsthand what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
Because you see what buyers want, despite the fact that we have limited inventory. Right now, we've got high prices, we've got high interest rate, and we got a limited amount. And buyers can still be picky despite not having a plethora of options, right? Yeah. And you can see certain things that they're going for that may be a new trend, or it may be something that we've overlooked in the past. And in turn, when we're looking at a property, we can say, okay, you know what? We can afford to pay more for this because based on what I saw with my buyers and my own listings, these types of houses are getting a lot more activity because they have X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And your buyer pool is going to be bigger. And so like we're still basing it off the comps, but we also know that chances are that number could go higher. Even if it doesn't go higher, we're going to have a large buyer pool to pick from.
Right.
And that makes a big difference because those specialty type of houses, if you miss for whatever reason, buyer gets cold feet or whatever it is, you may be waiting around for the next buyer. It doesn't mean it won't sell.
Right.
But like in my case, time is money, right? And so the ability to say, and we've seen it all the time where buyers have put in an offer on our house. We go to schedule the inspection because they're putting in multiple offers on multiple houses. No, they actually got an offer accepted somewhere else. We're like, okay, next one up, right? You want to be able to have a list of people. So because things could go awry, like I said, buyers get cold feet, change of heart. You want to have the next one up, right? And understanding the houses that will attract that kind of level of attention is very important so that if that situation arises, you're not really feeling it. You just go to the next buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. And by working with buyers, I can kind of see where their mentality is at, and I work with people with all different price ranges, which really helps us because a lot of the houses that we get, we usually have like a median average, but still like, buyers that are looking in the $500,000 range, this is what's going on, as opposed to the buyers that are looking in the $700,000-800,000 range. And knowing what they're doing, are they putting out offers all over the place? It really helps with that so that when we're looking at things from our end, just like you said, like if we're going to get a house that is a specialty type house, we need to know what the demand is going to be and, offset that by maybe, hey, you know what? This is a house that might not have as crazy of a demand. If we can put it out at this price, then we will drive, traffic to it and we will drive the demand. And by, feeling out different areas, across Long Island, different price points, that's how we get to know that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you talked about running a large team, and obviously having a team isn't for everybody, okay? But at the end of the day, I've always said this, I know you agree, right? Like every agent, they're their own business, right? Like you may be like a 1099, but at the end of the day, you're still your own business, right? And the ones that really succeed, even if they're just doing it on their own, still have to treat it like a business and be able to delegate and get things off their plate, right? So aside from, the city-sized population that you have on your team, okay, what does the back-end support look like? How does that team run on a day-to-day? Because obviously the guys, the agents that you have, they're doing their own thing, but there's got to be people in there to help support it.
Yeah, of course. So obviously, like you said, it's not for everybody, right? So just because somebody is a top producing agent doesn't mean they're cut out to be a team leader. I think the one thing to understand is if you're starting a team or if you have a team is that you're going to be the point person no matter what. They've joined your team because they want you. And you have to want to help. You have to want to help coach. You want to help educate. You have to be hands-on. but beyond that, having the right structure in place, having the right systems, and having the right people. So, like for instance, we have a full-time admin that helps designate, helps everybody on the team just for us, right? We have a full-time marketing company that does our video content, that does our social media posting, things like that, on top of, within, the beauty of being within the brokerage that I'm at. We have a fantastic manager in our office that's there to always help us. We have another full-time admin that helps with the whole office, which also in turn helps with our team. So I take on the responsibility of the higher end things. Like when somebody needs help, with pricing a house, with dealing with a difficult buyer, with, going on a listing appointment, things like that, where I really in person or have the value, as opposed to, hey, I need help filling out my paperwork, or I need to get a processing report, or I need to do this or that. I have the other people in place to handle those types of things.
And the fact of the matter is like you've been able to do all that, and you've done it without having an iPhone.
It's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how do you attribute that, right? Like most of the world, right, uses an iPhone.
Yep.
You decided, no, I'm going with Android.
I've always been like a Windows guy, right? So like it's funny. So my parents, they had way back, they were selling computer systems back in the 80s. So one of my earliest experiences with my dad, beyond sports, different things like that, was like we would build computers together. So I'd always build my own custom computers, things like that. So I was just accustomed to doing things on my own, having a little bit more flexibility.
Gotcha.
Which when Android came out, that was that I could make my phone do whatever I want, and I just became so comfortable with it that when Apple came around, it was, the iPhone was, sleek, whatever, awesome, great, but I'd had a smartphone for years before, so I was just accustomed to Android, and I like what it brings to the table, and I like being a little different.
That's fine. And it's okay with being different. Now, Tim Cook's eventually going to see this podcast, okay? And once he does, we're going to have him make a plea, send you a free iPhone. If he does that,
Yeah.
will you implement it into your routine?
Maybe. We'll see.
I'm going to venture to say no. If Zach says maybe, that's a polite way of Zach saying no, okay? Because he doesn't actually want to say no because he's not that kind of guy. So maybe means no for Zach, okay? All right? Yeah. But Tim Cook, if you're out there, let's get this man an iPhone, okay? All right. Now, as we talk about, you and I working together as an agent, how have you been able to grow working with me? Because it's not easy, right? Like, I'll be the first to say, like, I'm a tough guy to please. I can be demanding. I'm respectful, but demanding, okay? And aside from that, we buy these houses because they're complicated, to say the least,
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
And even when we put them out on, the back end, I've always said that, like, as a flipper, I have a target on my back, right? Because they know the average homeowner, they puts a house on the market. In this market, they do an inspection. There's no expectation for the seller to do anything because they know that that's an inconvenience to them. When they know that the guy who's selling it has a construction background, even if they know they're one of 50 offers, and they're usually not big asks, they always make these requests, right? And obviously, they know you're making money, so they're going to try to get you however way you can. How is it that working with me in the complex transactions that we've done helped you as an agent?
I mean, tremendously. And to your point, demanding, yes, but always respectful. We always have very good conversations. And even when, something comes up or whatever, it's not a screaming match. It's not this, it's not, like we're equals, right?
Yeah.
We work together. We're trying to do the same thing. So it's always been that way, which is why I think we really work well together. But it's helped me tremendously in that the amount of different situations that we've been involved with, the amount of different types of houses, and being able to see
different
things,
areas,
like we go everywhere. We literally go, it's Suffolk County house buyers, right? But we go everywhere.
Yeah.
We literally
everywhere on Long Island.
Correct.
At least.
Yes.
Well, that's not true. I'm doing a house in Westchester now
Well,
too.
there you go.
So, but by and large, anywhere on Long Island,
sure,
right?
And it takes me into places like we've bought and sold a house in pretty much every single town at this point, and multiple, right? So being able to have that kind of exposure to different areas, to different types of houses, to different types of people, the different situations, but also the value it's brought just in terms of, more opportunities for getting in front of other people, right?
Yeah.
Like, so good talk about. So, by having all these houses that you purchase, that, you renovate, that we put back out, gives me more opportunity to then obviously sell those houses, meet more buyers,
Sure.
do more open houses, things like that. So the amount of knowledge and experience that amount of business has, I mean, it's definitely fueled me to be where I am today. So, 100%. It's been a tremendous help in my business.
All right. So the next thing we're going to go into is talking about if somebody comes in. I've seen a lot of agents come in, right? They might actually they may have retired. They may have a decent amount of money to play with to start investing in like marketing, right? There's obviously a lot of talk about, Zillow leads, Zillow Flex. What do you feel is a good opportunity for agents out there in terms of if they're going to put their money anywhere, where do you put it?
So, I mean, I've, never been shy to say that I spend a lot of money on online advertising. There are some agents that are completely against it, but that was another big thing that I hung my hat on in the beginning is, I was an early adopter in Zillow. That's a lot of the ways that I got a lot of my initial leads. And I still, to this day, that's what fuels my team. We use a variety of different online sources. But the biggest thing that I would say is consistency. So the problem with most agents with online leads and online systems is that they'll give it a certain period of time, 3 to 6 months, and they'll be like, you know what, these leads are crap, I'm out. You really got to give it more time. And yes, while a vast
And you think beyond 6 months?
I think you have to.
Really? Now, why is that?
So if you think about it, a lot of the leads that you get, especially online leads, they're cold. They're people that are just online. They're clicking on a house. They want some information. Sometimes they just want an order taker. They just want somebody to show them the house and just be done. Other people actually need help, but you're going to get a vast majority of different types of leads. So I have leads that I've still been converting, and I've had a lead that I've been working pretty much since the beginning of when I got into the business.
Really?
That she's actively looking for a house.
So
right
like
now.
10 years.
Yeah.
And she's never bought anything in 10 years.
Mm-mm.
And you're still working that.
My
lead.
follow-up game is strong.
Your follow-up game is very strong. You're very good.
But that's
Your draft game isn't strong. Your ability to identify good jet players is not strong, but your follow-up game is strong. I'll give you that.
It's so the consistency with it. In order to convert a buyer lead, some of them will go right away. They want to see these 5 houses.
Yeah.
You show them, you're putting in offers, and it's done. Other people, it just might be the right time. And what the problem is most agents, when they get that, when they meet somebody and the person isn't ready right then and there, they move on to the next one that is.
Yeah.
So part of it, again, is creating that pipeline, for the immediate, the near future, and then the distant future.
Yeah.
So as you're creating and as you're getting these leads, there will be some that are complete garbage. You'll get some that just, they already have an agent. They're not looking to buy,
Sure.
whatever. But as long as you stay consistent with it and you keep growing it, over time, it will pay dividends. That's not to say like if you're trying a lead source and you're literally just getting nothing from it, like you're not connecting with anybody, you're not doing anything, that's, cut that out. But like I can tell you with all the different lead sources that we've ever used, Realtor.com, Homes.com, Zillow, different things. They all have their pros and cons.
But they've all produced to some extent.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just a question of when.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then so you just have to kind of be in it for the long game.
Yeah, be in it to win it.
In it to win it. All right. I did not know that you were going back as far back as 10 years. You might have mentioned actually something about that, but I didn't realize it was that far. So, and obviously for people out there, like how many people just, they give up, they try and they try and they try. And so it's to your point, right? Like the ability to stick around long-term is going to be consistency.
Consistency, systems, have the right systems in place. I'm not the one necessarily reaching out constantly over time. I have a CRM that helps me do that, so it's, if I had to manage the, thousands of people that are in my database, it would be impossible, but you do what you got to do, and stay consistent.
What have you found to be the best CRM for real estate agents?
So that's a wildly discussed topic.
Yes.
And so for the longest time with the brokerage that I'm a part of, we have, it was KV Core, now it's Bold Trail.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of it. It's I've used other systems in the past.
I've heard some people like Follow Up Boss.
Follow Up Boss. That's it's a big Tom Ferry is a big proponent of that. So anybody that's, following him is usually using that. Both of them are good. Both of them are very similar. Like I've looked at pretty much everyone that's out there. Everyone of the different CRMs that are out there has a little bit of a niche, that they do things differently. I think as long as you find a CRM that gives you the things that you need, that you're going to use, because there's so many tools that all of them have that you're probably never going to use. So it's really identifying what you need to do and then picking the one that's right for you. But as far as that's concerned, Bold Trail has been great for us.
Okay.
It's good at, keeping us in front of all the people that we've met with, and the leads that it generates are, so, and that's kind of, again, I feel like your CRM, yes, it should be generating leads. It should be generating business for you, but if you're trying to get people cold off of them, I think it's a little bit more of a challenge.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's get something to a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is Zillow metrics. What is your feeling on Zillow metrics, right?
Can we tell everybody about our number?
Yeah. So just so you know, Zillow metrics is something that I've used it's been an inside joke between Zach and I for years. And if there's agents that I work with, like for the first time, like I tell Zach when we list it, as every listing, right? He'll put it out and be like, oh, the metrics are strong. Now, depending on what kind of mood I'm in, right, I could say that's great, or I might say I don't care about metrics anymore.
It's rare that you ever say that's great.
It's great, right? My standard is for a listing to be good, in 4 hours, it should have 100 saves and 1,000 views. What do you feel about that? Because then I feel like if we don't do that, we've mispriced the home, and we should drop it by 50,000. And new agents I've worked with, I've told them that, and I think they've had heart attacks.
They panic. Everybody freaks out.
Yeah, and it has happened. We have had listings that get 100 views and 1,000 saves in 4 hours. I want people to know it can happen.
It can happen.
That's the kind of hysteria I want with a listing.
But also, you have to let everybody know that it wasn't always that way. It used to be 1,100 in 24 hours.
Yes, now it's changed.
Because once we started consistently hitting that, then it was, no. Now it's got to be in 4 hours.
It's got to be in 4 hours.
Yeah. I think we have to start a line of merchandise that just has those,
the metrics matter on the front. The metrics matter on the back. Metrics don't matter because depending on what my mood is, when the metrics are good, I'll say I don't care about these metrics. They're just stupid.
And when they're bad, they mean everything.
They mean everything, right? So
I think you can actually use the metrics to really see, and it's actually something that we do look at even with my team. When we talk about knowing where to be with an offer, knowing how to know what the activity level is. Zillow is a really good indicator because by far and wide, regardless of whatever people do when they search for real estate, most of the buyers that are out there, and definitely all the sellers, are going to Zillow to look and see how their houses are doing. So if you see a house that has a ton of views and a ton of saves in a short period of time, there's going to be a huge demand for it. So it does matter to a degree. I don't know if you have to get 1,000 and 100.
You do. That's what's important. That's what's important.
But it does give you a good indicator. That's not to say that everything that Zillow has is correct. The Zillow's estimates they have been getting better, to be honest, but they're still wildly inaccurate.
Yeah. Sometimes they're crazy low, sometimes they're crazy high. You know what I mean? I had one that I'm putting out with another signature agent, and it had this estimate at 7. You know what I mean? We're putting it at 6. You know what I mean? It's definitely off. And I don't know how many people also don't know this or not. I always forget about it. But the very first flip that I did, your dad was one of the contractors. He had a pool company at the time, and I was dealing with a pool, and I was crapping.
Before we knew each other.
And I was crapping my pants over the whole scenario. There was a giant rock at the boulder at the bottom of the pool. I mean, I probably had to be a 300-pound boulder. It was one of those big decorative boulders. It was at the bottom of the pool. But we ultimately, we got the pool done, the house sold, and that's what kind of kicked it off for me. And then years later, you and I started working together, and you're like, my dad's a pool guy if you need to know. And I was like, really? And what's his company? And then you told me, and I was like, what? And then it all came together, and it was pretty interesting. You talk about a small world. So I want to kind of get into obviously some personal stuff about you. You have become a Pokemon card collector. All right.
Yeah.
Now, can somebody, if you're selling a house, right? Can a buyer's agent, if they give you a limited edition Charizard, can they secure the deal? Talk to me about these Pokemon
I mean, it makes
cards.
a big difference, and I think we have to let everybody know about the fun that you have from time to time.
Oh yeah, you should. Okay. Yeah.
So
Do you want to tell them or should I?
Oh no, I would like to tell.
Oh,
them.
please go.
So from time to time, when we have different listings, especially when they're very busy, every once in a while, I will, from an agent I've never heard of, but from a real brokerage, I'll get a message telling me that they're going to be submitting this wild offer. It usually has to do with the amount that Jeremiah is envisioning that we're going to get for the house. I end up getting this message, and it's an agent that wants to present this crazy offer, and they always have something at the end of it. And most recently, I was offered a limited edition Charizard if I would accept their offer. So
Yeah.
To answer your question.
Well, you have to tell them it's me.
Oh, yes. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's me on the other end with a burner line.
Yes.
Okay, pretending to be an agent and then like putting out the offer. And then of course, Zach's always extremely respectful, despite how ridiculous the offer may be. Oh, thank you very much. We're, looking at offers by, Tuesday. Please submit, this is my email. And then I'll wait and then I'll say something, and this time it was a limited edition Charizard card, and then he'll just write back to like, I hate you.
yeah, which by that point, I'll usually know that it's you.
Yeah.
But I'll still I won't say it directly to that person.
Yeah,
I'll just message you.
Well,
just in case.
I mean, even on that one, you would have had to have known that couldn't have been real. What agent is offering you a Charizard card?
See, you never know, right? Because we're so out there in social media these days, and the reason, obviously, that I've gotten into Pokemon because of my sons, and you see it, but I post some stuff every once in a while. I was going to card shows, so from time to time, you get other agents that are doing their homework to a degree. I've never been bribed before, so I knew immediately that was
in this market, though, you never know, right?
No, you never know. But yeah, it's always it is a little bit of a highlight when I get those from you.
Long Island residents, do you have a house that you want to potentially sell off market, your terms, your timeline, your way, or do you know of somebody that could benefit from that? Then definitely give us a call. You can reach out to us at 631-333-SELL. The number is below, or visit our website at SuffolkCountyHouseBuyers.com. And for any deal that you refer over to us where you are not the seller, the first deal you refer to us, we pay a $5,000 referral fee. The second deal, we pay a $10,000 referral fee. And get this, the third deal that you refer to us, we will split the profits with you 50-50. And some of our deals are multiple six figures, so this can be a life-changing amount of money. It could pay for weddings. It could pay for college, anything that you choose from. So please take advantage of this great opportunity. Once again, we're looking for off-market opportunities where a seller wants to sell on their terms, their timeline, their way. So aside from being a great agent, dedicated family man, you're a great fantasy football drafter. You drafted my team last year and I won, so thank you very much for that. You are not good at identifying the Jets draft picks. Every pick that the Jets like to make, he's like, oh, I think that's a great pick. Okay.
Not every single one.
Every single one. Every single one. You're too positive across the board. They've made nothing but bad picks. Okay. You didn't like Quinnen Williams.
Wrong.
You didn't like him. You didn't like him. You didn't like Sauce Gardner.
Incorrect.
Okay, you didn't like Sauce Gardner.
If I like everybody, how do I not like everybody?
Because the ones you don't like turned out to be good. So Quinnen Williams,
No.
Sauce Gardner, with Garrett Wilson.
Go back through your texts. Bring up the receipts, because if you look, I liked, and historically, I typically like every first round pick.
Yes.
Because I always feel like they're going to be great and everything else like that. But in recent history, outside of Zach Wilson, the Jets actually have done a pretty good job identifying talent in the first round.
What do you think of this year's pick?
I like it. It was safe.
It was safe. This is where the positivity comes in.
Well, you look at it like the sexy pick would have been the tight end, Tyler Warren, right? That would have been a typical Jets move. Get the one that's going to get all the fanfare. But they went safe. They went with Membo, and it's something that we've always not had consistency with a good line. Right, we haven't had that since the days of Nick Mangold, DeBerkshire Ferguson. So I thought it was a safe pick to go with. I was happy with it, and then the tight end that they followed up with getting in the second round, who is actually Jason Taylor's
Yes,
son.
I didn't know that actually.
Which is kind of cool because he played for the Jets for like one season.
Yes, and was hated by the Jets for years.
Because he was a Dolphin.
Yeah. And then when he came over, actually, he kind of started to become like a bit of a fan favorite, and then his perception of the Jets
Kinda
and
changed.
the Jets fans' perception of him changed.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's interesting how that's all come together.
Yeah, so it was.
And I think his mother, not Zach Taylor, is it Zach Taylor? Who is it on the Dolphins? Jason Taylor married Zach Thomas's sister.
Oh, is that true?
I think he married Zach Thomas's sister,
Okay.
and that's their kid.
Oh no! Wow,
Yeah,
wow,
if
that's
I'm
cool.
not mistaken, I
yeah.
could be wrong. Don't
Genetics.
Yeah, so there's some really good genetics here.
Yeah.
Okay, and you didn't like that pick.
I did like that. No,
You didn't like this guy can't pick anybody.
I-
Like you trust him for real estate, you trust him for fantasy football. He's not allowed to be the GM of any NFL team.
Well,
okay.
I wouldn't say that would be my strong suit.
Yeah.
I am a diehard Jets fan,
Yeah.
and I am always an optimist in general, which is probably the right combination to have as a Jets fan. Because if you're not an
No,
optimist,
you need to be like me, which is a constant pessimist. Okay, it's never going to get better.
Yeah.
This is I personally believe that if you and you've done a bad job of this, I've done a bad job of this. I'd like to think we're both great dads, but we've allowed our kids to be Jet fans, which
Yeah.
in my opinion constitutes child abuse. Okay, it does. It constitutes child abuse, and we're great parents, but outside of that, we've made some bad choices. Okay, and I have said to protect my children, I'm instituting that I want them to be positive with everything, but when it comes to Jet stuff, I need them to adopt that negative mindset and realize that if this is the route you're going to go down, I'm setting expectations. Just prepare for a lifetime of suffering.
Yeah.
You're not doing that. You're not doing that as a parent, and shame on you for that.
I know. Yep. It's very true. However, with this season, I'm already going into it expecting not much.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like as a Jets fan, that's just what you have to take, it's not going to be the year. This is not going to be the year. It's never going to be the year until it actually is. And then you'll be surprised. But I feel like in the past, especially, Aaron Rodgers, everything that we've done, like it's been the year.
To me, it's like if you can't make it work with Aaron Rodgers, I understand he's not the Aaron Rodgers of 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think he can make it work with anyone. Now, I am starting the slogan, we're canning for Manning, okay? Okay, we want to can the season. We're canning for Manning.
Okay.
But unfortunately, they could have the first overall pick, and he will skip the draft.
No,
he won't go into the draft just to not go to the Jets. And if I'm the Manning family, that's exactly what I'm telling him to do.
What will happen is, in typical Jets fashion, is they will be awful the whole year, but they'll put it together for the last 2 games and put us outside of the top.
Yeah, they'll win 3 games instead of winning 2.
Correct, exactly. And we won't get the first pick. We'll get the second or third pick, and we'll have to trade up to get even a better player. And it's like everybody else in that position. Well, like look at Cleveland this year. They traded back 3 spots. They get a first
if
round pick,
Manning
a second
comes
round
out
pick,
in the draft,
Yeah.
and you have the first available pick,
you're picking him.
and you need a quarterback,
picking
unless you have unless you're like Chicago, right, and you have Caleb Williams or something like that, and you even remotely need a quarterback, you're picking him. So no one's going to trade that pick at that point.
It's very true.
This is why, right? You've got to set proper expectations for your kids. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to do that.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. You're right.
Okay. Now, if you had a choice, what's the most coveted Pokemon card out there?
Debatable. That's definitely debatable. So I would say probably one of the most valuable, is a base set Charizard.
Base set.
First edition.
Base set Charizard first edition.
Shadowless. The fact that I know these things is really because I never picked up a Pokemon card until about a year and a half.
Are you
ago,
also
2
playing
years.
Dungeons and Dragons in the basement? Okay, because now I'm worried. Now I'm worried. All right. So to that Jet Super Bowl or a baseless Charizard?
Jet Super Bowl, like
Bowl.
hands down.
Okay,
I would give very many things to see that in my lifetime.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So that card is probably worth, depending on the, millions of dollars.
Is it really?
Oh yeah.
That card is worth millions of dollars.
Yeah. So if you have a perfect condition graded, copy of that.
So all right. So you're willing to give up millions of dollars essentially to get that Jet Super Bowl.
So it's something money can't buy, right? You know, so it's like you can make enough money. Like I could sell more houses and buy what I want, but I can't buy a Jets Super Bowl.
No, well, I mean, I guess if you sell enough houses, right,
Well,
you
but
could buy the team.
But that doesn't mean they're going to win.
No.
You could have the best team on paper.
No, and I wouldn't
then-
want you running the team. That's for certain. I would not want you running
No.
the team. A
No.
fantasy football team, different story,
Well,
you know. But
I know how I identify talent, right?
you identify fantasy football talent, just long-term organizational talent for the real
Incorrect.
world.
No,
You
no,
can't
no.
do. You
Okay,
can't do.
all
All
right.
right.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, buddy, for being on the show. I appreciate it. And that wraps it up, guys. Please follow and subscribe. And as always, if you have any interest in potentially selling your home off market, or you need any help in any way, shape, or form, or you know somebody that may be looking to sell off market, reach out to us, SuffolkCountyHouseBuyers.com, or call us at 631-333-SELL.